Is Wizards of the Coast printing too many Magic the Gathering cards? This is a question that gets asked all of the time by members of the Magic the Gathering community, but because of the fact that we have limited information on the operation of Wizards of the Coast, as well as their balance sheets and things like that, it is very hard to know the answer for certain. However, someone who is much more informed on this topic is Mark Rosewater, the lead designer for Magic the Gathering, and he addressed this exact topic in an article he wrote nearly 15 years ago, and I'm going to be showing you that article today to show you the historical precedent for when situations like this have come up in the past and how they have been dealt with. The article in question is titled The Year of Living Changerously, and as I said, it was written by Mark Rosewater, who became the lead designer for Magic the Gathering in December of 2003. So at this point, he had been lead designer for a little under 5 years. And this article is famous for being the introduction of mythic rares to the world, but it also has another aspect to it, which is the announcement that they are going to be printing fewer cards per year. The thing that they realized, and that Mark Rosewater specifically states, is that it was getting much harder to get into Magic the Gathering. They realized that the speed of release of new cards was front and center, because if new players quickly get overwhelmed, they tend to walk away, never to return. A new player today trying to get into the game has the same hurdles that all the new players have had historically, but one entering this July, for instance, faces a standard environment of over 2,100 cards. For context, the standard environment in question had 2,142 cards in it, and the standard environment that most recently rotated in 2022 had 2,166 cards. So it is a shockingly similar number of standard legal cards. And that's just something that's very interesting to me because Wizards of the Coast has been aware of this problem for a long time, and they actually did address it. I do, before getting to some more numbers though, want to say that the second reason they made the change was feedback from existing players. So they listened to the community and heard that they were printing too many cards. Even established players were having issues keeping up, and they've, according to this graph, been ramping up card production for years, which is kind of hard to tell from this graph. It's not really the best graph for demonstrating that, but I'll be sharing some of the numbers with you shortly. But they said they simply went too far. We were printing too many cards for new and established players. So 15 years ago, Magic the Gathering had reached a very similar crossroads to one that we face today, and they drastically scaled back the number of cards they printed. In 2009, the year after this article came out, there went from 2142 cards legal in standard to 1619. So there were almost 500 fewer cards in standard just a year later. A year after that, there was 1,483 cards legal in standard, and then for a long period of years, it hovered between 1,500 and 1,600, with the most recent low point being 1,440 cards in standard in 2016. The year after that, it went up to 1853, so kind of a start of a spike. A couple of years later, it was over 2,000 in 2019, and then, as I said, in 2022, we have gotten back to 2,166 cards, which is very similar to this initial point where they were having some problems. And just for reference as well, there were a little bit over 1,000 new cards in 2022. So it's a very interesting problem that Wizards of the Coast has dealt with in the past. They've taken community feedback into account and they've lowered the number of cards. Now, today, the problem is a little bit more complex than what they dealt with back then, because the complaint is not just about the number of cards in standard legal sets. It's about the number of cards overall from being printed in Commander products and other supplemental sets. But I think that the interesting thing about this perspective is that us as Magic players from an outside perspective can levy a complaint against the game, and then we have to see whether or not they take that complaint seriously. But clearly, as indicated by this article, this is something that they have been aware of as a potential problem in the past, and something that they have addressed in the past. So I would say that there is hope for the future as well. The other thing that I will say that could influence this decision is that I think Magic the Gathering has gotten easier to get into over time, thanks to digital tools like MTG Arena having a built-in tutorial where you can just have somebody log on to MTG Arena and kind of learn the ropes of the game with a very simple system. Now, that is a very subjective take, I know, but it is definitely true. I think that there's more resources available now online and YouTube videos and things like that for learning how to play the game than there were in 2008 when YouTube was in its infancy and over overall, it was much harder to get this sort of information. So new players do have a leg up, which is maybe why they've steadily increased the number of cards available in Standard. And I do understand that a lot of the complaints about products have to do with supplemental sets and things like that. But just simply from a perspective of players complaining, players feeling heard, and then changes being made by Wizards of the Coast, I think this article is really encouraging for what could happen for the future of the game, because it shows that they are willing to listen, or at least they have been historically, and they have been shown that they can make effective tweaks over time. But that's going to depend on what ends up happening. This is mere speculation and mere sharing of an extra resource and an extra perspective from somebody who I would consider to be probably the leading authority on this topic, at least the leading authority that writes their perspectives out into the world for everybody to see. If you did enjoy this video, in the comments section down below, leave hashtag MaRo's opinion, or maybe not MaRo's opinion, that's a little bit, hashtag MaRo's writing, because maybe this isn't his current opinion, but MaRo is a common abbreviation for Mark Rosewater. So leave hashtag MaRo's article in the comment section down below to let me know you made it all the way till the end of this video. Let me know what you thought as well. Hit the like button if you'd like to see more of this type of video in the future, and I will talk to you next time.